Welcome back to another deep dive. If you are listening to this right now, I know exactly who you are.
Yeah, you're a learner.
Exactly, you are a learner. You are someone who is insanely curious about the world, someone who wants to bypass all the noise and that endless information overload out there.
And just get straight to the real satisfying aha moments.
Right, because you value your time, but you also don't want the superficial summary. You want the actual insights. And that is exactly what we are doing today.
We really are.
We're looking at something that we all do every single day, often without even thinking about it, but we're looking at it through a very specific, very revealing lens.
And it's a phenomenal mirror to look into.
It really is. We're going to look at second language acquisition. Now, not to give you a grammar lesson, but to hold up a mirror to how our brains naturally construct social reality.
Because we take human communication completely for granted. When it's effortless and native to us, we just open our mouths and the architecture of social interaction just sort of falls out.
Right, it just happens.
But when you break it down, when you look at how someone has to artificially construct that architecture from scratch, you realize that everyday conversation is incredibly, almost terrifyingly complex.
So today's mission is based on this fascinating set of excerpts we have from a source called the English Fluency Masterclass, Building Natural Speech Patterns.
Led by two really insightful instructors.
Yeah, Emma and John. And our goal today is to deconstruct exactly what separates a beginner's robotic, stilted speech from a fluent speaker's natural, connected, effortless rhythm.
Which is a huge gap.
A massive gap. But I want to be clear right up front. This deep dive is not about memorizing English vocabulary.
Definitely not.
It's about decoding the hidden architecture of how human beings naturally share details, how we tell stories, and how we navigate social friction with grace. It's really about the psychology of connection.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when you look at how a second language is taught, it reveals so much about how the machinery of human connection actually functions.
And what is crucial to understand about the original source material we are working from today is that its primary goal isn't just passive consumption.
Right. You can't just sit back.
Exactly. The instructors, Emma and John, make it very clear from the beginning that they're asking their students to actively practice speaking and thinking skills.
They want the listener to repeat things, to shadow the phrases.
To physically train their vocal tract, to internalize these patterns. It is an active physical construction of fluency. What's fascinating here is that the source focuses specifically on a very critical transition space in language learning. They identify this as the B1 and B2 levels.
Let's hover on that for a second, because the B1 and B2 intermediate levels are essentially the uncanny valley of language learning, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
It's this incredibly frustrating plateau.
The plateau is notoriously difficult. In the realm of linguistics, B1 and B2 represent this liminal space where you possess the raw materials, but you lack the mortar.
You have the bricks, but no way to stick them together.
Exactly. You know the basic vocabulary. You know how to ask where the train station is. You know how to order a coffee. You can conjugate the past tense.
But you are trapped in a transactional mindset.
Completely trapped. The leap required to go from B1 or B2 to actual natural conversational speech isn't just about learning more words. It requires a fundamental cognitive shift in how you map your thoughts and deliver them in real time.
And that takes a lot of mental energy.
It requires managing an immense cognitive overhead while trying to maintain social grace. And that specific monumental leap is exactly what the source material is trying to facilitate.
And the very first major challenge the source identifies in making that leap is something I think we can all instantly relate to, even in our native languages.
Especially before we've had our morning coffee.
Oh, absolutely. It is the trap of the one-word answer. The instructors talk about how moving from basic isolated phrases to natural connected speech is the single biggest hurdle for these intermediate learners.
And the example they use is devastatingly simple.
It really is. Emma asks John, "How is your morning going?" And they point out that a beginner's instinct, almost universally, due to that cognitive overload you just mentioned, is to give a short, abrupt answer. They just say, "Good."
The classic one-word barricade. Good.
Good. It's a total conversation killer.
Oh, yeah.
If you ask me how my morning is and I just say, "Good," I have effectively handed the entire burden of the interaction back to you. I've built a brick wall.
You've answered the literal informational prompt, but you have entirely failed the social objective of the interaction.
Right.
Small talk isn't an exchange of hard data. It is what linguists call phatic communion. It is a social ping to the network to check the connection.
I love that. A social ping to the network.
Right. When someone asks about your morning, they aren't looking for a status report. They're offering an invitation to connect. A beginner in a language says, good, because their working memory is completely saturated, just translating the question and finding the appropriate vocabulary word to answer it.
So there is no mental bandwidth left for social nuance.
None. So the source provides an improved fluent alternative. The instructor, John, offers this response instead. He says, "It's going well. I woke up early today and I had some coffee, so I feel awake."
I really want to pull that sentence apart because it transforms a complete dead end into this beautiful conversational bridge.
It really does.
It literally manufactures surface area for the other person to grab onto.
It creates immense surface area, and it does so by employing a very specific, highly effective three-part structure. Let's deconstruct the cognitive architecture the source is laying out here.
Okay.
The first part is the general status. It's going well. This fulfills the basic literal requirement of the question. It is the equivalent of saying good, but phrased with a bit more syntactic maturity.
But the magic is that they don't stop at the baseline requirement.
Exactly. And this is where the fluency actually happens. They move immediately to the second part, which is providing a supporting narrative detail. I woke up early today and I had some coffee.
Right, this is the social evidence.
This requires a tiny bit of vulnerability. You are actually letting the other person peer into your life for a microsecond. You paint a tiny mundane picture. And then crucially, we have the third part.
That result.
The emotional or physical result of that narrative detail. So I feel awake.
So I feel awake. It ties it all together so neatly. Status, detail, result. It sounds incredibly natural when you hear it, but when you look under the hood, you realize it is a highly engineered formula for social survival.
It is a formula that forces the speaker to step out of isolation. And the source reinforces this with another slightly more complex scenario.
The busy morning.
Right. They ask, what if your morning wasn't just fine? What if it was a stressful, busy morning? How do you express that negative state fluently without sounding abrasive?
The busy morning example is fantastic. The source gives this response. It's been a little busy. I had to answer some emails and get ready quickly, so I feel a bit tired.
We see the exact same three-part scaffolding at work.
Status. It's been a little busy. Detail. I had to answer some emails and get ready quickly. Result. So I feel a bit tired.
If we look at the broader psychological picture of what the source is teaching here, fluency is fundamentally about showing your work.
Showing your work, like in math class.
Exactly like in math class.
Yeah.
In a beginner's mind, or frankly in the mind of a native speaker, who is just socially exhausted, they know they feel tired, so they might just blurt out, "I am tired."
Right.
But a fluent speaker subconsciously understands the social contract. They provide the specific evidence, the emails, the rushing around to justify that internal state. By providing the specific evidence to justify the state of being the speaker sounds incredibly natural, competent, and most importantly, relatable.
Because you aren't just dropping a complaint into the void, you are giving it roots in a shared human experience. You are giving the listener hooks. If someone says to me, I had to answer some emails and get ready quickly, so I feel a bit tired, my brain instantly lights up with possible responses. I can say, oh, I completely relate. I hate waking up to a full inbox.
Or mornings are always a rush for me too. Did you at least get breakfast?
Exactly. The conversation flows effortlessly because you did the work of building the bridge. So for you listening right now, I want to actively pull you into this process. The source places a massive emphasis on repetition and shadowing, actually practicing these concepts.
It's vital.
So as you are listening to us, I want you to mentally apply this three-part formula to your own morning today. Status plus detail plus result. Instead of just thinking my morning was fine, construct that full sentence in your head right now.
What is your status? What is one specific mundane detail of what you did?
And what is the physical or emotional result of that action? It is a tiny mental exercise, but it completely changes how you frame your own reality to someone else.
It is a powerful exercise in generating conversational momentum. You are training your brain to stop at the first easiest answer and instead push forward into the relational details.
Yeah, that mental bandwidth we just talked about regarding mornings, it gets tested even further when we move out of casual chat and into the public sphere. Here's where it gets really interesting, because the source transitions to a very different kind of interaction. We are moving to a cafe setting.
It's a cafe.
And it highlights that ordering food or a drink isn't just about exchanging currency for calories. It is a complex linguistic dance.
It is a dance of power dynamics and politeness. It represents the crucial difference between transactional speech and relational speech.
Break down the difference for us.
Transactional speech is purely about utility getting the job done with maximum efficiency. Relational speech is about maintaining social harmony and preserving dignity while getting the job done.
Wow, preserving dignity.
Yes, and the source perfectly illustrates the friction that occurs when intermediate learners, stripped of their vocabulary, rely purely on transactional speech.
The beginner's order in the source is the ultimate example of stripped-down utility. It is literally just, tea please.
Tea, please. It is highly efficient. You will absolutely receive tea. But it is entirely blunt. It lacks the social lubrication that native speakers naturally employ to soften the edges of a command.
Right.
In linguistic terms, a command is a threat to the listener's face, their public self-image and autonomy.
So the instructors contrast that blunt tea please with a much more expanded, socially aware version. The instructor Emma says, "I'd like a cup of green tea please with no sugar. It is infinitely smoother."
It establishes the speaker's desire rather than issuing a direct imperative. But they push it even further with a more complex example of ordering a cappuccino. The instructor says, "I'll have a cappuccino, please, with extra milk, if possible."
I zeroed in on that specific phrase at the end, if possible. That is such a fascinating, almost paradoxical addition to a restaurant order.
It is the critical mechanism of the entire interaction. The source specifically highlights that adding small details and conditions like "with no sugar" or "if possible" softens the demand. It makes the speaker sound polite, accommodating, and highly natural. But let's look at why it works sociologically.
Right, because logically you are at a cafe. Of course it is possible to get extra milk. You are paying them for it. So why does a phrase like "if possible" work so well to make us sound fluent?
Because it operates as a linguistic shock absorber.
A shock absorber, I like that.
It removes the blunt force of the transaction. When you say "give me extra milk," it is a direct imposition. It places a rigid burden on the listener, the barista. But when you add "if possible," you are engaging in what linguists call negative politeness.
Negative politeness.
You are grammatically acknowledging the other person's agency and their right not to be imposed upon. You are essentially saying, "I have a preference, but I also respect your operational capacity and autonomy to fulfill it."
It is a profound shift in tone.
You are offering them a theoretical escape route, even though the social reality of the cafe dictates they will fulfill the order. It is a shared social fiction. We maintain this fiction to ensure the interaction remains a relationship between two humans, rather than a human pressing buttons on a vending machine.
It is wild to think about the sheer amount of diplomatic heavy lifting those two little words, "if possible," are doing. They completely alter the power dynamic of the room. And for you listening, I really want you to reflect on this in your own life. Think about how often you might sound unintentionally blunt or abrasive.
It happens so easily.
Maybe not in a foreign language, but perhaps when you are new to a field of study or starting a new corporate job or navigating a new social circle. When we are unsure of ourselves or when our cognitive load is maxed out trying to understand new concepts, our instinct is to strip our communication down to the bare transactional minimum.
We shoot off an email saying, "Send me the report."
We say, "I need this file." We completely forget to add the "if possible" or the "when you have a moment" or the "I'd really appreciate it."
We abandon the architecture of politeness because we are so hyper-focused on just getting the core literal message across.
The source is showing us that achieving true fluency, whether in English or just in professional life, means developing the extra mental bandwidth to weave those softeners back into our speech.
That concept of mental bandwidth is actually the perfect bridge to the next major conceptual leap the source covers. Because as you transition into these B1 and B2 intermediate levels, the cognitive overhead increases exponentially. You're no longer just ordering coffee or stating basic facts. You are expected to articulate complex internal thoughts.
Right.
The source establishes a very firm, non-negotiable rule for this level of fluency. You can't just state an opinion anymore. You must share why you think something.
The burden of justification. I love how the instructors frame this as a mandatory upgrade. In the beginner stages, it is enough to just say, "I like this movie," or "I think that book is good." But at a fluent level, you have to back it up. You have to show the math of your beliefs.
The instructors use a highly structured example to demonstrate this cognitive leap. They discuss the topic of studying daily. The instructor, John, provides this model sentence. "I think learning English every day is very helpful because it keeps the language fresh in my mind and gives me more confidence when I speak."
And the other instructor, Emma, immediately praises this. She explicitly calls it a perfect sentence structure. So let's break down why the source considers this particular arrangement of words to be the gold standard of fluency.
It is considered perfect because of its sheer efficiency in lawyering complex information. First, you establish the clear opinion. "I think learning English every day is very helpful." Then you introduce the pivot word, the crucial justification marker. Because.
Because.
And finally, it doesn't just offer one flimsy reason, it delivers a compound justification. Benefit 1, it keeps the language fresh in my mind. And benefit 2, gives me more confidence when I speak.
It is incredibly comprehensive. Opinion, pivot, benefit 1, benefit 2. It leaves absolutely no room for ambiguity.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of cognitive science, what the source is really illustrating here is that true fluency requires staggering mental agility. You need the ability to immediately link an abstract belief to its underlying logical reasons without pausing to search for the words.
That sounds intense.
It involves a process called syntactic mapping. Natively, we don't build sentences word by word. We map out the entire architecture of the thought, the opinion, the pivot, and the multiple supporting pillars in milliseconds before we even begin speaking.
Wow.
A beginner, however, maps word by word. They might state the opinion pause for an excruciatingly awkward amount of time, while mentally translating the concept of freshness or confidence, and then awkwardly stumble through the justification. The fluent speaker has the entire blueprint ready before they even say the word because.
That is a massive amount of subconscious processing happening in real time, and the instructors in the source clearly understand how intimidating this cognitive load is for a learner. That is exactly why they utilize a very specific, almost neurological teaching technique right after presenting this complex sentence. They use a method called shadowing.
Yes, shadowing is a fundamental cornerstone of modern linguistic acquisition.
In the source audio, they don't just read that long, complex sentence and ask the listener to repeat the whole thing from memory. They slice it up. John says, I think learning English every day is very helpful, and there is a deliberate pause. Because it keeps the language fresh in my mind, another pause, and gives me more confidence when I speak.
They chunk it.
They are feeding it to the listener in highly manageable chunks. And that is such a vital tool, not just for learning a language, but for digesting any dense, complex information. When you are confronted with a massive, intimidating concept, breaking it down into its constituent clauses makes it infinitely easier to process without your working memory crashing.
It goes deeper than just memory retention, too.
Yeah.
Shadowing is essentially motor training for the vocal tract.
Motor training, like working out.
Exactly. The physical muscles of the mouth, tongue, and throat need to build myelin sheaths, neurological pathways to produce these new sounds and rhythms effortlessly. By chunking the information, it allows the learner to internalize the literal cadence and rhythm of logic. They aren't just memorizing a string of vocabulary words. They are physically learning the melody of how to express an opinion.
The melody of logic. I love that. Now, speaking of expressing things with the right melody and tone, the source moves on to a topic that I found deeply relatable, and it involves shifting our timeline. We are moving from present opinions to talking about the future. Specifically talking about plans.
The weekend plans.
The instructors bring up the classic Friday afternoon question, what are you doing this weekend? And they both laugh about the fact that almost universally, the beginner's default answer to this question is a complete conversational dead end. They just say, nothing.
Nothing. Once again, we see the absolute minimum viable response.
Yeah.
The social void.
Right. What are you doing this weekend? Nothing. End of conversation. The social ping is entirely rejected. But then the instructor, John, shares the fluent alternative from their text. He says, I don't have many plans, but I might go shopping on Saturday, and on Sunday I'd like to watch a new movie at home.
It is a remarkable, elegant transformation of a negative state, having zero plans, into a positive conversational offering.
And they specifically draw attention to the verbs used to construct that offering. I might, and I'd like to. Emma points out that using these phrases sounds much softer and much more natural. Let's dig into the psychology of that softening. If someone is definitely going to the store, why is I might go shopping considered better, more fluent communication than I will go shopping?
The source is tapping into a very subtle, highly sophisticated aspect of human interaction called epistemic modality.
Epistemic modality.
It deals with the speaker's assessment of certainty. Natural conversational speech rarely deals in absolute ironclad certainties about the future. Life is inherently unpredictable, and our language has evolved to reflect that reality.
That makes total sense.
When a beginner uses the strict, unmodified future tense, I will go shopping, it can sound incredibly robotic or overly rigid, like it's a scheduled, unavoidable mandate rather than a leisurely weekend activity.
It sounds like a military briefing. I will go shopping at 0800. I will watch a movie at 1900. It's incredibly severe.
It is severe because it leaves no room for the listener to interact with the concept. But by analyzing the use of phrases like I'd like to, and I plan to, the source, reveals that these softer verbs, these linguistic hedges, demonstrate a much more nuanced grasp of the human experience.
They show a comfort with possibility.
They express desire and intention rather than just rigid, unyielding facts. It signals to the listener that you are a flexible, easygoing human being. It leaves the conversational door slightly ajar. If you say, I might go shopping, the listener can easily say, oh, me too? Where do you usually go? It softens the future to invite collaboration.
Softening the future. That is such a profound way to look at it. And the source actually challenges its audience to put this collaborative approach into practice immediately. Right after explaining this concept of hedging, the instructors ask the audience directly, what are you doing this weekend? Try to use I plan to or I might.
And then they just wait.
Yes, in the actual source audio, there is literally 5 seconds of dead, unedited silence. They force the listener to stop passively consuming the lesson, overcome the cognitive friction, and actively generate a response out loud. So for you listening to us right now, I want to issue the exact same challenge. Let's take a pause. What are you actually doing this weekend? Don't just default to nothing. Actively use the phrases I plan to or I might in your head right now.
Take a second to do it.
It entirely changes how you perceive your own time, doesn't it? It frames your weekend as a landscape of fluid possibilities rather than a void of nothing. Okay, so we've covered the present moment with morning routines and opinions. We've covered the future with weekend plans. So what does this all mean for how we handle the past?
This is where the source makes one of its most critical unifying points. They pivot to the concept of storytelling.
Yes, the source elevates storytelling to a paramount position in the hierarchy of language. The instructor John states explicitly that storytelling is key for fluency. But why is it the master key? Why is telling a coherent story fundamentally different neurologically and linguistically from just listing facts about things that happened in the past?
Because as the source points out, storytelling forces the speaker to synthesize multiple complex elements simultaneously across time. You have to connect past tense actions, descriptive environmental details, and internal emotional states, all while maintaining a coherent linear timeline for the listener.
That's a lot of juggling.
It is the ultimate cognitive test of all the disparate schools we have been discussing today.
Yeah.
You are essentially building a virtual reality environment for the listener using nothing but syntax.
The instructors illustrate this world building with a fantastic example about a trip to California. I am going to read the source's example exactly because we really need to hear the architectural structure of it. Emma says, last year I traveled to California with my family. We started in Los Angeles, where we visited Hollywood. Then we drove to San Francisco. By the end of the trip, I felt tired but very happy because it was one of the best vacations I've ever had.
That short 4-sentence paragraph is incredibly dense with structural markers. If we perform a deep structural analysis of what the source has provided, we can see exactly how a fluent narrative is engineered to prevent the listener from getting lost.
Where does it start?
First, she immediately establishes the foundational anchors, the setting, and the actors. Last year, I traveled to California with my family. The listener's brain is instantly grounded in time, place, and company.
Right, you aren't spending mental energy guessing where we are or who is involved. The stage is perfectly set.
Exactly. Then we move into the chronological sequence of events. And the source highlights the absolute critical importance of sequence words. We hear, we started and followed by the eat. Then we drove, and concluding with, by the end.
Started, then, by the end.
These words are the load-bearing pillars of the story. They keep the listener continuously oriented in time. Without them, a beginner just lists disconnected floating events. I went to LA. I went to Hollywood. I went to San Francisco.
It sounds like a grocery list.
The sequence words create the momentum and the narrative drive.
They weave the separate, isolated events into a single cohesive thread, and then there is the conclusion of the story, which is my favorite part. It doesn't just end abruptly with the physical action of being in San Francisco. It ends with a deep emotional resolution.
Yes, and notice the sophisticated complexity of that emotional resolution. She says, I felt tired but very happy because of one of the best vacations I've ever had. She's expressing a complex dual emotional state, tired but very happy. Human beings rarely feel just one pure emotion.
That's so true.
And then explicitly referencing our earlier discussion about the burden of justification, she immediately defends that feeling with a because statement. It is a perfectly resolved, incredibly satisfying narrative arc achieved in just 4 sentences.
It is a masterclass in efficiency. But the instructors also clearly know that telling a 4-sentence story about a major multi-city vacation can still be deeply intimidating for a learner. So they immediately bring up a much smaller, lower-stakes example to prove the concept scales. A micro-story.
Right, the weekend park story.
They offer this practice phrase. Last weekend, I went to a park with my friend. The weather was sunny, and we had a great time walking and talking.
That microstory is fascinating because it proves that narrative architecture is fractal. The rules apply no matter the size of the event. You don't need a grand sweeping adventure to sound fluent. Even in just 2 simple sentences, the source successfully combines an action, went to a park, an environmental description, weather was sunny, and a feeling or result, had a great time.
It contains the exact same structural DNA as the larger California story.
It is the exact same blueprint, just scaled down to a weekend afternoon.
Now, so far, the source has focused on very pleasant, relatively frictionless interactions, having coffee, talking about your relaxing weekend, sharing happy vacation memories. But the instructors wisely acknowledge that human life isn't always perfect. Sometimes things go wrong. Systems fail.
They absolutely do.
And that brings us to the final and perhaps most critical major segment of the source, friction and social grace. How do you solve problems and complain effectively in a new language?
This is often where intermediate learners struggle the most and where the stakes are the absolute highest. When you are frustrated, your cortisol spikes. Your cognitive resources are immediately depleted by stress. You are angry, you feel wronged, and you just want the problem solved.
I want to yell.
The beginner's instinct, stripped of their nuance by stress, is to simply state the problem as bluntly and loudly as possible.
Right. It's the linguistic equivalent of fight or flight. The instructors give the highly relatable example of being at a restaurant and receiving cold soup. The text points out that you shouldn't just look at the waiter and blurt out, "It's cold."
Stating, "It's cold" is not just blunt, it is deeply confrontational. It acts as an accusation of incompetence. A fluent speaker, however, intuitively understands that they need to achieve a specific utilitarian goal, getting the soup heated, without creating a hostile enemy of the waiter who is handling their food.
So the source provides the polite, fluent, de-escalated alternative. Emma says, "Excuse me, my soup is a little cold. Could you please warm it up for me?"
Let's deeply deconstruct the softening mechanisms at play here, because there are 3 distinct, highly calculated layers of politeness being applied to this problem to prevent social rupture.
Okay, layer 1.
First, there is the preparatory phrase, "Excuse me." This alerts the listener that a request or an interruption is coming, preventing them from being startled. It acts as a verbal tap on the shoulder.
Then my absolute favorite part of the sentence, the intentional downplaying of the issue. She doesn't say, "My soup is freezing," or "This is ice cold." She says, "My soup is a little cold."
Yes, the word "little" is doing immense diplomatic and psychological work there. It acts as a linguistic minimizer. It intentionally downplays the severity of the waiter's mistake. It subcommunicates this is a minor, understandable oversight, not a catastrophic failure of service. It preserves the waiter's dignity.
And the final layer.
The third layer is the solution-oriented polite request. "Could you please warm it up for me?" Instead of demanding action with an imperative like "warm this up," she is asking a question about their ability to help.
It is a brilliant masterclass in de-escalation. And they follow it up with another, much higher stakes scenario that anyone who has traveled can relate to: the broken air conditioning in a hotel room.
The source provides this model for navigating that specific crisis. "Hello, the air conditioning in my room isn't working properly. Could someone please come to fix it?"
This raises an important question, doesn't it? When you are traveling, you are likely jet-lagged. You are in an unfamiliar environment where you don't fully understand the cultural norms, and your room is boiling hot. The primal urge to just march down to the lobby and yell, "AC broken, fix now," is incredibly strong.
This raises an important question precisely because it touches on how we maintain our composure and handle intense frustration when we are operating at a severe disadvantage. You are a guest in their hotel. You ultimately need their help and cooperation to sleep comfortably.
You can't just burn the bridge.
The source explains that using specific targeted words, like "properly," is a crucial diplomatic tool. Saying the AC isn't working properly is infinitely less aggressive than saying is broken or is destroyed.
Proper.
The word "properly" implies that the machine is valiantly trying to work but just failing slightly. It removes the blame from the hotel staff and places it on the mechanics of the machine. And then phrasing the demand as a question, could someone please come to fix it, maintains the dignity of both the speaker and the hotel staff.
You make them the hero.
By asking a question, you're transferring the power back to the staff, making them your savior rather than your servant. It effectively demands service while strictly adhering to the complex social rules of politeness. As the source implies, mastering these specific diplomatic phrases isn't just about sounding nice. It is a vital, non-negotiable survival skill for international travel.
It really is. It is literally the difference between having a terrible sweating night in a hostel hotel and getting your problem solved quickly with an apologetic smile.
Yeah.
Okay, we have covered a truly massive amount of ground today, all drawn from this single dense masterclass session. Let's synthesize what we've unpacked on this journey.
We started by looking at how to defeat the conversational brick wall of the one-word answer by expanding our morning routines with the cognitive scaffolding of the status detail result formula.
We explored the deep pragmatics and architecture of politeness in a cafe, looking at how tiny conditions like if possible act as linguistic shock absorbers that completely change the power dynamic of a transaction.
We examined the heavy burden of justification at the B1 and B2 levels, learning how the brain uses syntactic mapping to quickly link abstract opinions to their underlying reasons, using because.
We talked about softening our future plans with epistemic hedging like might and would like to, leaving the conversational door open.
We deconstructed the architecture of a narrative, relying on sequence words and emotional resolutions to weave disparate events into a compelling fractal story.
And finally, we learned how to navigate the cortisol spikes of social friction and complaints with polite grace, using downplaying words and question-based requests to preserve dignity.
It is a remarkably comprehensive roadmap to natural fluent speech. And what I find most poignant and deeply resonant is the final piece of wisdom the instructors Emma and John share at the very end of their lesson. After all this complex linguistic theory, they reflect on the core philosophy of the entire endeavor, stating simply, fluency doesn't come overnight. It comes from small, consistent practice.
Small, consistent practice. Shadowing the logic until it becomes muscle memory.
Yes. Mastering these complex patterns, learning to instinctively add a vulnerable detail to soften a blunt demand or to structure a coherent story requires immense patience. It requires a willingness to continuously step out of the absolute comfort zone of those easy transactional one-word answers. It is about actively choosing the slightly more complex, more socially connective path over and over again until the neurology adapts and it becomes second nature.
That is beautifully said. And it brings me to a final provocative thought I want to leave you with today. We've spent this entire deep dive looking at these concepts, adding detail, using sequence words, softening our demands through the lens of someone struggling to sound more fluent in a second language. We've analyzed how these tools make an English learner sound more natural, capable, and human.
But the mirror applies elsewhere.
Exactly. I want you to try turning that mirror directly onto your native language today. Notice how often you rely on autopilot. Notice how often you use blunt one-word answers in your native tongue simply because you are tired. Notice how often you say a robotic good when someone asks how you are, or a dismissive nothing when they ask about your weekend. If you applied these specific fluency techniques, adding a carbon, because to justify your casual opinions, sharing a tiny vulnerable narrative detail about your morning, or consciously softening a demand at a cafe with an if possible to your everyday conversations in the language you already know best, how might it completely change the way people connect with you?
It's a great question to ask yourself.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. As always, keep learning, stay curious, and we will catch you next time. Welcome in. It's you. We are genuinely thrilled you're joining us today.
We really are.
If you are tuning into this deep dive, we already know a little bit about how your brain works. You are someone who loves gaining knowledge, but you want it thoroughly and you want it efficiently.
You're looking for the good stuff.
Right. You thrive on those sudden aha moments where a concept just clicks right into place. And you are always ready to uncover the hidden mechanics of the everyday things we all kind of take for granted.
Exactly.
You don't want to be overwhelmed by the noise. You want the pure, distilled essence of what actually matters.
And today's material is just a perfect candidate for that exact kind of mental extraction.
It really is. We have something truly special lined up. We are looking at a fascinating piece of source material today. It is a curriculum from an English fluency masterclass specifically focusing on a module called The Conversational Foundations of Daily Life.
Now, on the surface, I know this might sound like it's just a textbook for language learners.
Yeah, like a grammar lesson or something.
Yeah, right. The sources cover how to navigate a variety of very common everyday scenarios. Things like family discussions, daily routines describing the city you live in, shopping for clothes, workplace communication, and sharing future goals.
But the mission of today's deep dive is so much bigger than just looking at a list of vocabulary words.
Yeah.
We aren't just going to look at what people say in these situations. We are going to decode the why.
That's the key.
The core goal here is to explore how simple, almost invisible conversational upgrades transform basic transactional exchanges into meaningful, engaging, and polite human connections.
It's really about the underlying architecture of how we talk to each other.
Yeah, and the real hook here is that the secret to sounding fluent, whether you are learning a brand new language or just trying to be a more charismatic communicator in your native one, it isn't about having a massive dictionary-sized vocabulary.
Not at all.
It is about knowing exactly how to offer the perfect conversational hooks to keep a dialogue flowing effortlessly.
It's a profound shift in perspective. What is so compelling about how this curriculum approaches language is that it doesn't treat conversation as a rigid test.
Like a pass-fail exam.
Exactly. It's not an exam where you either get the answer right or wrong based on your grammar. Instead, it treats conversation as a collaborative exercise. Honestly, it's a deeply sociological look at how we build bridges with other human beings.
It really is.
The text takes us through the mechanics of connection. It suggests that true fluency is actually a measure of empathy, timing, and structural awareness.
It's behavioral psychology disguised as an English lesson.
Precisely. By analyzing these specific everyday scenarios, like how you talk about your siblings or how you ask a coworker to review an email, we can uncover the hidden frameworks of charisma and approachability. It is about moving away from viewing communication as the mere transfer of data.
Which brings us to the first major concept from the curriculum, the art of the expanded answer.
Oh, this is a great one.
The text sets this up using a scenario we have all encountered a million times. You know you are at a party or a networking event or a first date, and someone asks you that standard baseline question, do you have any brothers or sisters?
A classic icebreaker.
Right. Now, the curriculum points out that a beginner-level response to this is just stating the pure fact. The example given is simply, yes, one brother.
Let's pause and really look at that beginner response.
Yeah.
Yes, one brother. Factually, it is flawless. It answers the question with absolute precision.
It does.
But linguistically and socially, it operates like a brick wall.
A brick wall is the perfect way to describe it. It just stops everything dead in its tracks.
Think about the mechanics of a conversation. I like to use the metaphor of a tennis match.
Okay, I like that.
When someone asks you a question, they're hitting the ball over the net to you. If you answer with, yes, one brother, you aren't hitting the ball back. You are just letting it hit you in the chest and drop dead on the court.
Oh man, that is a visceral image.
Right. And now the other person has to walk over, pick up the ball, walk back to the baseline, and serve an entirely new question just to keep the game going.
That sounds exhausting for the other person. You are forcing them to do all the work. You're essentially demanding that they interrogate you to keep the silence at bay.
It creates cognitive fatigue. Your goal in a social interaction shouldn't just be to transfer data. It should be to sustain the interaction and make it effortless for the other person. That short answer gives your conversation partner absolutely nothing to work with.
Nothing at all.
But the curriculum contrasts this dead-end answer with an intermediate-level expanded example that fundamentally changes the dynamic.
This is where the magic happens. So instead of just saying, yes, one brother, the curriculum suggests expanding it to this. I have one younger brother named Daniel. He is still in high school and he loves playing basketball, so most of the time he is out on the court with his friends.
The structural difference there is monumental.
It's a night and day difference. We went from a 3-word data point to a tiny, vibrant, 3-dimensional story. We get his name, Daniel. We get his life stage, he's in high school. And we get his passion playing basketball out on the court with his friends.
This illustrates the core concept of conversational hooks.
Right, the hooks.
When you provide an expanded answer like the one about Daniel, you're essentially offering your conversation partner a menu of options. You have proactively done the heavy lifting. You've given them 3 distinct hooks they can grab onto depending on what they find most interesting or relatable.
They can pick whatever angle they want.
Exactly. They can respond to the age aspect by asking, oh, high school, is he looking at colleges yet? This is such a stressful time.
Yeah, or they can respond to the sports aspect. Basketball. Does he play for the school team or is it just for fun?
Or they might even relate to the sibling dynamic itself and say, it must be fun having a younger sibling. I was an only child.
That's so true.
You have completely removed the threat of awkward silence from the equation by actively providing the fuel for the next stage of the discussion.
It's almost like an act of hospitality. You are making the conversational space comfortable for the other person so they don't have to scramble for something to say.
I love that word hospitality. It fits perfectly.
And the text takes this concept even further with a slightly more complex family dynamic. It gives an example for someone with multiple siblings in different life stages. The sentence provided is, I have two older sisters, Amanda and Emily. Amanda is married and lives in Chicago, while Emily's finishing her college degree in New York.
That is a lot of information.
It packs a tremendous amount of geographical and personal information into one breath.
But notice how it doesn't sound overwhelming.
No, it flows really well.
That is because of a very specific linguistic tool highlighted in the text. The word while. Just that one word. Yes. The curriculum explicitly points out that using while to connect two different descriptions is a major fluency upgrade. It's worth exploring the psychology and the structural brilliance of that single word.
It's just a conjunction, but you're saying it's doing a lot of heavy lifting here.
Enormous heavy lifting. While acts as a cognitive suspension bridge, think about human working memory and cognitive load. If you just delivered that information as a listener, Amanda is married in Chicago. Emily is in New York.
Right.
It sounds incredibly choppy.
It does. It forces the listener to process two separate, disconnected facts.
It sounds like a police report.
Right. It lacks any sort of narrative flow.
But by using, while Amanda is in Chicago, while Emily is in New York, you are doing the processing work for the listener. You are explicitly creating a relationship of contrast between the two facts.
You are holding the two life stages up next to each other smoothly.
It instantly elevates the perceived fluency of the speaker, because it creates a rhythmic flowing sentence rather than a staccato burst of raw data.
It shows that you aren't just retrieving facts randomly from a filing cabinet in your brain. You are composing a cohesive narrative on the fly. And the curriculum makes it clear that listeners should practice these exact structures.
It emphasizes building that muscle memory.
Yeah, so that when you are asked about your family, you don't default to the flat, defensive one-word answer. You automatically reach for the hooks and the bridges.
It challenges the assumption that efficiency is always the goal of communication. How often do people unintentionally shut down conversations in their own daily lives simply by being too efficient with their words?
All the time.
Efficiency is fantastic for a spreadsheet or a military briefing, but it is absolute poison for small talk. The implicit lesson from this first section of the text is that charm requires a willingness to volunteer a little bit of extra unprompted detail. You have to be willing to spend a little extra social currency.
Which is a perfect segue into the next massive part of our conversational lives covered by the sources. Daily routines.
This is a fun one.
But we aren't just talking about listing your schedule. This part of the curriculum is fascinating because it touches heavily on authenticity and the strategic use of imperfection.
Routines are tricky in conversation. They can very easily sound boastful or incredibly boring.
Totally. The curriculum breaks down how to naturally describe a daily routine moving from morning habits to evening realities. The morning sequence they provide is pretty standard, almost prototypical.
What's the sequence?
It goes waking up around 7 a.m., making coffee, and checking emails before work. It paints a picture of a productive, organized, highly functional start to the day.
The morning routine described in the text establishes what sociologists might call a baseline of competency.
A baseline of competency. I like that.
Waking at 7 a.m., making coffee, checking emails. It is a universally understood professional rhythm in the modern world. It is highly relatable, but it is also a slightly idealized version of a morning.
Sure. It's the version of ourselves we generally prefer to present to the world. It signals, I am a responsible, functioning adult.
It establishes credibility.
But then the curriculum moves to the evening routine, and the shift in tone is brilliant. The prompt asks the theoretical speaker about exercise, and the model response is, I try to exercise in the evenings, but sometimes I am too tired after a long day.
That is a very deliberate instructional choice by the creators of this curriculum.
It's so jarringly real compared to the morning routine. I read that and immediately thought, yes, finally someone admits it.
It's refreshing.
What is crucial here is that the source material specifically praises this exact answer, explicitly stating that it sounds very natural. They are grading the student highly for admitting failure.
We need to analyze why the text highlights this as a prime example of sounding natural. When people are learning a language, or honestly, when anyone is just trying to make a good impression in a high-stakes social setting, they constantly fall into the trap of wanting to sound invulnerable.
They want to be bulletproof.
Exactly. If asked about their exercise habits, they might construct a robotic, flawless answer. I exercise every evening for 1 hour because cardiovascular health is important to my productivity.
That sounds like an answer generated by an AI trying to mimic human behavior, or someone in a job interview trying way too hard.
Exactly. While grammatically perfect, it is completely devoid of humanity. It sounds rehearsed, and frankly, it creates distance.
Why does it create distance, though?
Well, in psychology, there's a concept known as the pratfall effect. It states that highly competent people become more likable and approachable when they make a small mistake or admit a minor flaw.
That makes so much sense.
By admitting a highly relatable vulnerability, the physical and mental fatigue after a long workday, the speaker in the curriculum's example builds instant deep rapport.
Because perfection is intimidating, but exhaustion is universal.
Authenticity is deeply intertwined with imperfection. When you say, "I try, but sometimes I am too tired," you are signaling to the other person that you are human, you have limits, and most importantly, you are comfortable enough with them to share that mild failure.
It acts as a release valve for the conversation.
Yes, it gives the conversation partner permission to also drop their guard and take off their armor.
It invites them to commiserate. They might jump in and say, "Oh, I completely understand. I bought an expensive stationary bike last year and now I just use it to hang my laundry on."
And right there, that shared vulnerability, that mutual admission of not being perfect, becomes the actual foundation of a natural flowing conversation. It builds trust far faster than trading resumes or boasting about discipline.
It's amazing that a curriculum literally designed to teach fluency is actively encouraging students to embrace and express those minor everyday flaws. It proves that sounding natural isn't about perfectly executing a schedule or perfectly conjugating verbs. It's about perfectly capturing the human experience.
The overarching lesson of the daily routine module isn't to prove you have a good routine. The true goal is to find common emotional ground with the listener. The 7 a.m. coffee gives them one superficial point of connection, but the evening exhaustion gives them a much deeper resonant point of connection. It's a masterclass in empathy generation.
Taking this idea of generating a connection, let's look at how the curriculum maps this onto geography.
Geography is a great next step.
The text delves into strategies for describing where you live, specifically framing this as a vital tool for when you were talking with international friends or when you were traveling abroad. This entire section is about painting a picture of place. And to illustrate this, the source provides two highly distinct profiles: the big city and the small town.
This is where we see language used for identity curation.
Let's look at the big city profile first. The example given is Dallas, Texas. The speaker highlights that it is a large city, mentions its historical significance, and then specifically calls out a favorite attraction, the Downtown Art Museum.
Notice how the curriculum is teaching the student to selectively curate geographical identity. When you are traveling or speaking to someone from another culture, the way you describe your city becomes a proxy for how you describe yourself.
Oh, that's deep. So you are your city.
In a way, yes. The description of Dallas provided here isn't just a list of census data or geographical coordinates. It is a carefully selected set of thematic descriptors.
It's highly stylized.
Very. By choosing to focus on the large scale, the historical context, and cultural landmarks like an art museum, the speaker is aligning their own personal identity with culture activity and historical significance.
They are choosing to highlight the dynamic, cosmopolitan aspects of their environment.
They are signaling to the listener, I value culture, I value history, and I am part of a vibrant ecosystem.
It's like they are acting as the PR representative for their own hometown, but really they are doing PR for their own personality.
That's exactly what it is.
And then the curriculum contrasts this sharply with the small town profile. Instead of focusing on monument scale or museums, the small town is described as quiet, a place where people know each other well, and it features natural beauty, specifically mentioning nearby mountains. The pivot in focus here is dramatic.
The pivot is profound because it shifts the entire value system of the description. The big city description focuses almost entirely on outward external achievements, human history, and curated art. But the small town description immediately turns inward toward community intimacy. People know each other well. It focuses on the social fabric and the unbuilt environment, the quietness and the mountains.
It's a completely different vibe.
It demonstrates a vital advanced lesson in conversational fluency. Fluency isn't just about having the sheer vocabulary to describe a skyscraper or a mountain range. It is about understanding the emotional weight of those words. It is about selecting the right themes to evoke a specific feeling in your listener's mind.
Well, wait, doesn't that imply that we are just manipulating our listeners? If I choose to highlight the museum instead of the traffic, am I just spinning a narrative?
It's not manipulation. It's effective storytelling. Every place has 1,000 different truths. Dallas has museums, and it also has terrible highway traffic.
That's true.
A small town has beautiful mountains, and it also might have a lack of economic opportunity. When you are in a casual conversation, you don't have the time or the mandate to give a comprehensive socioeconomic lecture on your region.
Nobody wants to hear that at a party.
Exactly. You have to choose a narrative thread. The curriculum is teaching that the thread you choose dictates the direction of the conversation.
So you have to decide what painting you want to put in their head. Are you painting a picture of bustling, ambitious culture, or are you painting a picture of peaceful, grounded community?
Precisely.
The text actually prompts the learner to think about their own home. Is it quiet? Is it busy? And asks them to say a sentence out loud that captures that essence. It forces the realization that you are in total control of the narrative. You aren't just reciting a map, you are sharing an experience.
And sharing that specific experience is what bridges the gap between strangers from different backgrounds. If you tell an international friend about the quiet mountains and the tight-knit community of your small town, you are inviting them to compare it to their own experiences of community and nature in their home country.
You're giving them more hooks.
You're giving them another set of those conversational hooks we discussed earlier, but this time the hooks are atmospheric, cultural, and deeply emotional.
It's about finding the universal in the specific. Okay, so we've covered these highly personal, atmospheric conversations about family and hometowns. Now the curriculum forces us to transition into an environment that feels entirely different, but is arguably just as crucial to master.
And what's that?
Navigating transactional spaces. The text features a role-play scenario set in a retail clothing store, focusing on how our language needs to fundamentally shift when we enter a consumer environment. This is all about the dynamics of shopping and interacting with service workers.
Transactional spaces are absolutely fascinating from a linguistic and sociological standpoint. The power dynamics in a store are very explicit. You are the customer with the money. They're the employee providing the service.
Right, it's a hierarchy.
However, despite that clear hierarchy, these environments still require a remarkably high degree of social lubrication to function smoothly and pleasantly.
And a lot of people get that wrong. They lean way too hard into the hierarchy.
They do.
But the curriculum illustrates how to do it right. The scenario starts with the customer making some specific requests. They are looking for a blue shirt in a medium size, and they specifically note they want something casual to wear to work. That part is straightforward, establishing the basic parameters of what they need.
Just getting the data out there.
But the pivotal interaction, the part the text really slows down to highlight, happens over a pair of jeans. The curriculum explicitly points out that instead of making a blunt demand, like simply saying, "I want jeans," the speaker in the role play says, "I am not sure about the size. Could you help me check?"
We really need to focus on the phrasing the curriculum provides here. I'm not sure. Could you help me?
It sounds so simple.
It does, but the text explicitly labels this specific phrase as very polite and useful. Let's dive into the mechanics of why that is. There is a concept in linguistics called politeness theory, specifically looking at the idea of saving face.
Saving face.
Right.
Like avoiding embarrassment.
Yes, but more nuanced. Politeness theory suggests we all have a negative face, the desire to be independent and not imposed upon, and a positive face, the desire to be liked and appreciated.
Okay, I'm tracking.
When you are a customer in a store, you have the structural power to just issue commands. Do me jeans, find my size, ring this up. But issuing a direct command threatens the employee's negative face.
How so?
It is a direct imposition on their autonomy. It creates a rigid, slightly adversarial dynamic.
It makes them feel like a servant rather than a professional.
Exactly. But look at what the phrase "I am not sure" accomplishes. By saying, "I am not sure," you are introducing a microdose of vulnerability into a commercial transaction.
Injecting vulnerability into a clothing store. It sounds almost counterintuitive when you think about consumer culture, but it completely changes the vibe of the interaction.
It fundamentally shifts the dynamic from a transactional demand to a collaborative request. You are no longer a boss barking orders at an underling. You are a person seeking guidance from a local expert.
That reframing is so powerful.
Pairing that vulnerability with the invitation to assist. Could you help me check? softens the entire interaction. It supports the employee's positive face by acknowledging their expertise and agency.
You are recognizing that they know the store better than you do.
Right. And strategically, it almost guarantees a better, more engaged response from the service worker. You are treating them as a collaborative partner rather than just a mechanism or a vending machine to get what you want.
It is treating them with basic human dignity through syntax. Think about the difference. I want Jean's centers entirely on the speaker's ego and desires.
Right.
Could you help me check centers on the relationship between the two people in that specific moment? It's a tiny shift in words, but a massive shift in respect.
It really is.
And it just goes to show that true fluency isn't just about getting your point across. It's knowing how to make the people around you feel valued, even if you are just trying to buy a pair of denim pants.
This is a crucial takeaway for anyone, regardless of whether English is their first language or their fifth. The way we speak to people in service roles defines the environment we inhabit.
It shakes the world around us.
Politeness isn't just an archaic rule of grammar or finishing school nicety. It is an active social strategy that yields better outcomes for everyone involved. The interaction is smoother, the employee feels respected, and the customer usually gets better service.
Speaking of environments where social strategy and politeness are critical to survival, that brings us right to the next section of the curriculum, the diplomacy of professional English.
Oh, the workplace. High stakes.
We are moving from the relatively low stakes of the clothing store to the high stakes of the office. The source text establishes a firm rule for office communication. Professional English demands a delicate, constant balance of being highly polite, but impeccably clear.
It is a tightrope walk. There's no room for ambiguity because ambiguity costs money and time. But there is also no room for rudeness because rudeness destroys team cohesion.
The workplace is a unique ecosystem.
It is an environment where the stakes are intimately tied to livelihoods, professional reputations, and collective goals.
So every word matters.
Every word matters. Therefore, the language used in the office must act as both a shield to protect oneself and a precise instrument to get things done. The curriculum provides two excellent examples of this duality in action: managing upwards to a boss and making lateral peer-to-peer requests to a coworker.
Let's tackle managing upwards first, because that's where the anxiety usually lives. The text gives a scenario where a manager asks an employee for a report. Now, the curriculum explicitly warns the learner against just saying, okay, or simply acknowledging the request.
What do they suggest instead?
It offers this expanded, highly diplomatic response. Yes, I will send you the report by 3 p.m. I just need to double-check a few numbers before I send it.
The phrasing here is remarkably sophisticated. Let's analyze the power of that specific phrase, double-check.
It seems like such a common corporate phrase.
It is. But linguistically, in a corporate setting, double-check is doing an enormous amount of heavy lifting regarding perception and reputation management.
Because if a boss asks for a report and you just say, I need more time, it sounds terrible.
It does.
It sounds like you are unprepared or disorganized or just stalling. It immediately triggers anxiety in the manager that the work isn't getting done.
It sounds like an excuse. It signals a lack of control over the process. But when you use the phrase, I just need to double check a few numbers, you are completely reframing the reality of the delay.
How does that reframe it?
You are signaling diligence, accuracy, and extreme competence.
You are taking control of the narrative again.
Precisely. You are managing the manager's timeline expectations, perfectly promising concrete delivery by 3 p.m., while simultaneously reassuring them that the sole reason for the wait is your unwavering commitment to quality.
Wow, that's clever.
You aren't stalling because you are slow. You are delaying slightly to protect the integrity of the work. It is a brilliant piece of verbal diplomacy that manages the boss's anxiety while elevating your own professional standing.
It turns a potential negative, not having the report instantly ready to fire off, into a positive character trait. You are positioning yourself as the careful, detail-oriented employee who refuses to send sloppy work. It's genius.
It really is an elegant solution.
Okay, let's look at the second workplace scenario from the curriculum: peer-to-peer requests. How do you ask a coworker for help without sounding like you were just dumping your own work onto their desk?
This is a very common minefield.
The example provided is, would you mind reading this email quickly to see if everything looks okay? The text literally highlights would you mind as a magic phrase.
And in the context of office harmony, it absolutely functions like magic.
Really? Just those 3 words?
Yes. Would you mind is one of the most sophisticated, subtle tools in the English language for softening requests and navigating lateral hierarchy.
Let's break down that idea of lateral hierarchy. What does that mean in this context?
Coworkers are usually lateral to you. They are on the same level. They do not report to you. You have absolutely no formal authority to command them to do anything.
Right.
If you approach a peer and say, read this email for me, you are violating that lateral relationship. You are artificially elevating yourself to the position of a manager.
You sound incredibly bossy. And nobody likes a bossy coworker who has no actual authority. It breeds instant resentment.
But by initiating the request with the magic phrase, would you mind, you are fundamentally altering the nature of the interaction at a structural level. You're essentially asking, does it cause you an inconvenience to do this?
Okay, I see.
By framing the request around their convenience rather than your need, you are actively removing the pressure of a direct command.
But isn't that just a bit passive-aggressive or fake? Like, we both know, I want you to read the email. Why do we have to play this little dance where I pretend I'm asking about your convenience?
It's not fake. It's functional social lubrication. The dance, as you call it, is vital because it gives them an easy, socially acceptable way to say no if they are overwhelmed.
Oh, I see. So they can say, actually, I'm swamped right now, but I can look later.
Exactly. But paradoxically, by giving them that easy out and by protecting their autonomy, you make them much more likely to agree.
That is fascinating.
It shows immense respect for your colleagues' time. You are explicitly recognizing that their time is valuable, and you are asking for a favor, not issuing a directive.
It's all about preserving their autonomy. When you use the magic phrase, they feel like they are choosing to help you out of the goodness of their heart rather than being forced to help you because you demanded it.
Yes, that choice is everything.
It transforms a mundane office task into a personal favor which builds camaraderie and social capital instead of resentment. The nuance in these examples is just spectacular.
It is.
It shows that professional communication isn't about using big, intimidating corporate buzzwords like synergy or bandwidth. It is about emotional intelligence and deeply understanding the subtle pressures and power dynamics of the office environment.
This is precisely why the curriculum emphasizes these specific linguistic structures. The creators of this module aren't just teaching vocabulary to pass a test. They are actively teaching learners how to navigate complex social hierarchies with grace, efficiency, and respect.
And navigating with grace leads us perfectly to the final and perhaps most inspiring topic from the curriculum, projecting forward.
This is a really beautiful section.
This section examines how we talk about our goals and our dreams using future aspirations as the ultimate vehicle for conversational practice. The text provides two distinct examples of future projection to analyze.
What's the first one?
The first is a travel dream. The speaker talks about wanting to travel across the United States, specifically mentioning a desire to go to New York and Chicago to experience their unique cultures.
Discussing the future is positioned in this curriculum as a culmination of conversational fluency for several interconnected reasons.
I'm curious about the mechanics of this. Why is it the culmination?
Well, first, on a purely mechanical grammatical level, it requires a mastery of tense shifting. You are forcing the brain to move from the concrete observable reality of the present, your daily routine, the city you currently live in, into the abstract theoretical potential of the future.
It takes more brain power to talk about things that don't exist yet.
It does. It's a heavier cognitive lift.
Yeah.
But more importantly, from a psychological and interpersonal standpoint, talking about dreams requires a much more passionate, aspirational vocabulary. It forces the speaker to attach emotion to their words.
It brings a totally different electric energy to the conversation. Think about it when people talk about what they have to do, their posture slumps.
Oh, totally.
But when people talk about what they genuinely want to do, their eyes light up, their tone changes.
That emotional shift is palpable.
And the second example from the text really captures that forward momentum. It's a self-improvement goal. The speaker expresses a desire to improve their English fluency this year by practicing every day through listening to podcasts. It is a very meta, very practical goal within an English class.
It is practical, but it also reveals a tremendous amount of information about the character of the speaker.
How so?
There is a psychological concept called future self-continuity.
Future self-continuity.
Right. It's about how connected you feel to the person you will become. When you share a goal, like wanting to improve a skill through daily practice, you're explicitly showing your conversation partner that you possess high future self-continuity.
Who are showing that you care about your future self.
Yes. You are signaling that you are growth-oriented, disciplined, self-aware, and forward-looking.
You are telling them what kind of person you are without having to brag about it. You're showing, not telling.
Precisely. This is why discussing the future is such a powerful almost intimate conversational tool. It moves the interaction beyond the mere exchange of current facts. It invites the other person to engage with your potential.
They can be part of the journey.
Exactly. They might encourage you, they might share their own parallel goals, or perhaps they might even offer advice, resources, or connections that could actually help you achieve those dreams.
Yeah.
It turns a static conversation into a shared exploration of what is possible.
It creates a bond over what could be. You are inviting them into your future.
That's a great way to put it.
And this section of the curriculum concludes with an overarching piece of advice for the learners that I think is incredibly profound. It applies to absolutely everyone, no matter what skill they are trying to master or what language they are speaking.
What's the advice?
The text simply says, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to practice expanding your sentences little by little.
That sentence serves as the thesis statement for the entire curriculum and really for effective human communication as a whole.
Little by little.
Fluency, connection, and charisma are not about flawless, error-free execution. They're entirely about the willingness to try and the willingness to be seen trying.
It's about effort.
It is about having the courage to add that one extra unprompted detail about your brother playing basketball rather than hiding behind a one-word answer.
Right, throwing out that hook.
It is about the bravery of admitting that you are too tired to exercise embracing the pratfall effect. It is about remembering to use the magic phrase, would you mind to protect a colleague's autonomy even when you are stressed and rushed? It is a lifelong incremental process of expansion.
Little by little, just adding one more hook, one more bridge, one more moment of empathy. It is such a comforting and empowering way to look at how we interact. So taking a step back, what does this all mean for you, the listener, as you move through your week?
Let's recap what we've covered.
Yeah, let's recap the journey of this deep dive. We have unpacked the hidden architecture of our daily conversations. We learned how to ditch the exhausting one-word dead ends and instead use conversational hooks in family small talk to keep the dialogue flowing like a good tennis match.
We saw how establishing a baseline of competency in our morning routines allows us to safely embrace relatable imperfections in the evening, like skipping a workout. And we learned that this vulnerability actually builds far deeper rapport and trust than sounding like a perfect robotic textbook.
We also explored how to strategically curate our geographical identities, carefully choosing themes to paint vivid emotional pictures of our hometowns, signaling our values to the listener.
And we analyzed the profound difference between a blunt transactional demand and a collaborative request in a retail setting, proving that supporting someone's autonomy and saving face goes a long way.
And of course, we decoded the high-stakes diplomacy of the workplace, understanding how to use reframing tools like double-check to signal diligence and the magic phrase, would you mind, to navigate lateral hierarchies with respect and clarity.
We really covered an enormous amount of ground today.
You did. And the core lesson here goes far, far beyond the mechanics of language learning. This curriculum provided a profound masterclass in human connection.
It really did.
Expanding your sentences, providing conversational hooks, and practicing polite, thoughtful phrasing. These aren't just rules for a test. They are universal tools for empathy.
Absolutely.
They are tools for building confidence, for navigating the friction of the world more smoothly, and ultimately for bringing people closer together, one carefully constructed conversation at a time.
It raises a vital question about how we view our daily interactions. We have seen how language actually shapes reality, how a simple shift from, could you help me accessing, literally changes the entire atmosphere of a room and the neurochemistry of the people in it.
It's powerful stuff. So we want to leave you with a final lingering thought to mull over as you go about your day.
A provocative thought for the road.
If true conversational fluency is measured by how well we connect, collaborate, and empathize with others, rather than just how perfectly we construct a grammatically correct sentence, how might that completely change the way you approach your very next interaction?
It changes everything.
Whether it's asking a shop assistant for help finding a size, managing a tight deadline with an anxious boss, or simply sharing a wild, ambitious dream with a friend, what if the real goal of your next conversation isn't flawless, efficient delivery, but simply being brave enough to expand the narrative? Think about it. Until next time.